Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Today I thought I would do a tag. I was tagged by Greg from another Bibliophile Reads to do the Why Haven't I Read That Book Yet tag. It was an original that he created after watching a video on someone else's channel that's not necessarily, I don't think, a BookTube channel. Maybe it is. Anyway, but I'll leave links to his channel and the channel that inspired him down below. It's a really simple tag, really, I thought, fun to think about, kind of unique, allows you to kind of, I think, have a moment of confession about books you haven't read and why you haven't read them. Not that I necessarily feel guilt about not reading books, but occasionally I think to myself, wow, I really should have read that book by now. And I'm going to go with books I have on my shelf, even though one of them is a book I can't find. So there are really only 5 prompts, including not including a prompt to tag people, which I'll actually do. And Greg doesn't really actually require that you do the prompts at all, but I'm going to, I think, stick to the prompts, and I'll leave a list of them down below. So the first prompt is a classic book you haven't read. Well, there are lots of these because I really didn't make any effort to read classics for a really long time. And so I could have chosen any number of things. I've never read The Odyssey. I struggle to read things that were written in ancient Greece or ancient Rome. It's just an area, for whatever reason, those works don't click with me. I have tried. I have read a few. I have never read Middlemarch by George Eliot, which everybody tells me I need to read, and I still don't think I'm going to be reading that for October this year. But I think the biggest kind of classic hole in my reading that I'm aware of is my failure to read anything by Dostoevsky other than Notes from Underground. So I used to have, and I can't find it right now, an incredibly beat up copy of The Brothers Karamazov, which I've had since I was in college, and have attempted to read probably 5 or 6 different times and have failed to do so. There's something about Dostoevsky and the names and the Russianness, apparently, which I just have never really been able to get into in a long form. I have read some Dostoevsky short stories, but I would say, a serious novel or a larger novel by Dostoevsky is the classic that I haven't read yet. So prompt number 2 is a fiction book that you haven't read. And for this, I watched Elizabeth over at Bookends and Books version of this tag this morning. I'll leave a link to her tag down below. And she talked about something called, what she labeled the popcorn effect, which affects her decision not to read books sometimes. And I thought that was just perfect because it perfectly describes why I sometimes don't read works of fiction, particularly those that are really popular on BookTube. So the popcorn effect she describes is that effect you get of going to a movie theater and smelling popcorn and wanting popcorn, but after a while, since the whole place smells like popcorn, you become kind of sick of the smell of popcorn and you're not sure you want popcorn anymore. And therefore, if you apply that to books, what that means is that books which are really popular and you hear a lot about and are really hyped, and you hear so much about them, you know, in the beginning you think, yes, I want to read that book, but eventually you've heard so much about them and so many people talk about them and praise them that you just think, well, I don't really have any interest in reading that book anymore. For me, that happens all the time. It's one of the reasons why I don't really follow prize lists. I don't think I've read the Booker winners for several years, or Pulitzer Prize winners, or any of those things. For the most part, I've avoided those, and it means I haven't read some books that are really popular on BookTube. And the one that I thought about that I have not read, which was really the BookTube darling, I think, last year, and that's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This copy was kindly given to me by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, and I am sorry for not having read it yet, but it just is that kind of popcorn effect. So many people have read the book, and so many people have praised the book. I've heard so many things about the book that it really, in a bizarre, probably perverse way on my part, has kind of diminished my desire to read the book at all. I think I will get to it at some point, but I haven't. Prompt 3 is a nonfiction book that you haven't read yet, and this is a real problem for me. I kind of get in these themed reading where I really get interested in a topic, and I'll buy lots of books on that topic, and then I won't read them. Well, a while back, probably thanks to C-SPAN and their show about books, I got really into reading biographies, and so I read a lot of biographies. And I was on the string of reading biographies that I'd seen on C-SPAN's. I can't remember what the name of their show was, where they just had an author on for an hour and they talked about a book. But one of those authors, I believe, was Ron Chernow, and he was talking about his biography of John D. Rockefeller called Titan. And so I bought it. It's a really big book about John D. Rockefeller, and I was really excited to read it. And then my excitement for reading big biographies that I've seen on C-SPAN, and particularly for reading about John D. Rockefeller, faded. And so I've never read this book, even though I probably had it for at least 20 years. That's a problem for me. I also have a book about the beginning of the American Navy by Ian W. Toll on my shelf back there that I could have used, and there are a number of books that fit this description. Prompt 4 is a genre book that you still haven't read. I chose Ian Rankin's novel Exit Music. This was supposed to be the last John Rebus novel. John Rebus is a Scottish detective who I've read a lot of the Rankin's Rebus novels, and so I bought this thinking, okay, well, this is the end of the John Rebus saga, or Rankin writing about Rebus, and I don't think it is. I think he's written about Rebus again since then, and there are other books, and so I just never really got around to reading this. That's not the reason to read it in the beginning. In the beginning, I didn't read it because I had other Rebus novels that I hadn't read yet, and I wanted to read those before I got to the one at the end, and I haven't read those either. But now, it seems kind of silly or it seems kind of odd that this book is called Exit Music about Rebus, and then it's not actually Rebus's exit, so I haven't read it either. I do hope to get to that. I do enjoy reading detective novels, and I do like Rebus, even though I know a lot of people think he's just kind of too bog standard a detective. He's not interesting, but I like him. And then prompt number 5 is the book you've owned for the longest time but not read yet. I'm not sure that that's true for this, but this is probably the book I've owned the longest that I'm the least likely to read, and that's July the 7th by Jill McCorkle. I really don't have any idea why I bought this book or why I still have it. It's a cool book. I like books that are different shape, and it's a really well-designed book. A while back I did that try a chapter tag thing, or try a chapter, where I read a chapter from books that I had on my shelves that I hadn't read. And I read a chapter from this, and it really didn't do anything for me, didn't motivate me to read it. So I've had this book for quite a long time. It's possible I saw a profile of Jill McCorkle on, I don't know, CBS Sunday Morning 25 years ago, and bought this because of that. But I haven't read it, and I'm not exactly sure it's the kind of book I'm going to go out and pick up. So that would be my answer for the book I've had the longest but still haven't read. Would be July the 7th by Jill McCorkle. Anyway, the last prompt is to tag people. I'm going to tag Mark Nash. I'm going to tag Rosca from the Midnight Reader. I'm going to tag Fraser from Fraser Simon's Springboard Thought. And anybody else who thinks this is like a fun tag, do the tag. It's a great idea. And thank you again to Greg for tagging me. Anyway, I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.